Hey everybody, it's Miss A, and I'm here with your science review video for your Chapter 1, Chapter 2 test, which will be happening tomorrow. I'm going to put all the notes on here. I'll show you some pages. I'll give you some clues on how you do your study guide, which is right here. We'll go over all the questions. I will put the notes, and then I will show you where you're going to go to take care of this. So this is the study guide, and just so everyone is aware, the questions are the exact same questions the students will receive on the test, with the exception that on the test they are multiple choice. So I'm having them work them out on a study guide so they get a true understanding and they are able to easily answer multiple choice questions to get their assessment score. So let's look at the questions. The first one says, based on a tree's environment. So I know we're talking about plant life cycles. It can acquire certain traits over time. What is an acquired trait? Give an example of an acquired trait of a tree. Number 2, what is the main difference between an acquired trait and an inherited trait? Number 3, what is a bee's role in the life process of a plant? Number 4, give an example of a plant fertilization. Number 5, humans and animals carry seeds from one location to another. What process of plant reproduction are they helping with? Number 6, what part of the flower would you find, where would you find the pollen? Number 7, Sally's dog will not get her food from her owner until she is sitting in front of her bowl. What kind of behavior is this? Give an example of a learned behavior of an animal. What metamorphosis has 3 stages? Number 10, list the stages of complete and incomplete metamorphosis. Number 11, what is the beginning stage of complete and incomplete metamorphosis? Number 12, give an example of an acquired trait for a flamingo. Number 13, what stage does a seaside cicada most likely molt? Number 14, compare complete and incomplete metamorphosis. Number 15, the trees below have what in common? And then there are pictures of conifers, and this is an orange tree. And the student should be able to tell me what they have that is the same. We talked about that in class. So this is the study guide. Again, the questions that they will get tomorrow will have multiple choice responses. So let's talk about our study notes. We have 2 chapters that we learned about. The first one is Chapter 1. And Chapter 1 deals with plant life cycles. All right. It deals with plant life cycles, so we're going to talk about the 2 groupings of plants. So plants fall into either one of 2 types of plants. It is either a flowering plant, which does just what we say, it makes flowers, or it falls into a conifer. Conifers, which are cone-bearing plants. So there are 2 types of groupings, and these are the groupings that we have. Students need to understand that flowering plants make flowers, and flowering plants are our food producers. So anything you eat comes from a flowering plant. Flowering plants, once the flower dies, the seed is inside the flower. It then produces the fruit, and fruit means vegetation, anything you can eat. And conifers are non-edible. Non-edible. They are non-edible. Both flowering plants and conifers produce seeds. The seeds for a flowering plant is inside the flower. The seed for a conifer is inside the cone. They also need to know the parts of a flower. And that information is located on page 13 in their book. So I'm going to turn to page 13 and put that under the screen so you can see it for just a moment here. Here we have a diagram of the flower, and it shows this is the thin pollen tube that grows is here. This is where the pollen is housed. This is where the ovary or the ovule is. Oh, that's on page 15. Let me go to page 13. It's an even better display on page 13. Here we go. Here's the display on page 13. So you can see this is the buildup of the flower. Here are the petals. This long portion here is the pistil. All right. This here, the yellow part, is the pollen. The little sticks that make the pollen is the stamen. This is the ovule or the ovary. That will help you know that the pistil is the female part of the flower and the stamen is considered the male part of the flower. Every flower has both male and female parts because we don't know which, if a bee visits this flower and goes to another flower, it's visiting this flower and taking the male pollen and bringing it over to the female part of another flower. The students need to know this guide. It is on page 13 in their book. And yes, they need to know the parts. The pistil is the female part. The stamen is the male part. The pollen is attached to the stamen. And the ovules are where the eggs, where the seeds and eggs are, where they're housed. They need to know the stages of reproduction. Stages of reproduction for a plant. They need to know pollination, which is on page 14. They need to know fertilization, which is on page 15. They need to know seed dispersal, which is on page 18, and germination, which is on page 20. They need to know these. So let me go to page 14, and I will put the text underneath there so you can see it. And this one's going to be a little bit hard to do. Here we go. So this is the page where the information is housed about pollination. Deep inside many flowers is a sweet nectar. Bees and many other insects visit flowers to drink their nectar. As the insect looks for the nectar, its body brushes up against the stamen, the male part of the flower. Grains of pollen stick to its body. Then the insect visits another flower, and some of the pollen is left on the pistil, the female part of the flower of the second flower. The movement of pollen from a stamen to a pistil is pollination. So that's what pollination is. Let's look at the next page for fertilization. Fertilization. In pollination, a grain of pollen lands on a sticky tip of the pistil. Soon the thin tube grows from the pollen grain. The pollen tube grows down the pistil to the ovary. Inside the ovary are ovules. When the pollen tube reaches the ovule, a sperm cell joins with an egg. The joining of the egg and the sperm cell is fertilization. So basically the pollen made it to the ovule or the ovary. And then here's the picture of this exactly. Pollen's here. It goes down the pollen tube, reaches the ovule. That is fertilization. They need to understand that. The next page is 18. And on page 18, they're talking about seed dispersal. This page is another one that's going to be a little hard to see. So we have seed dispersal. Seeds cannot move from place to place by themselves. For seeds to reach new places, something must carry them. In seed dispersal, the seeds of a plant are carried away to a new place. So, seed dispersal can happen with animals. For example, seeds can attach to an animal's fur and drop off in one location. Seed dispersal can happen through wind. For like a dandelion, if you blow onto a dandelion, the seeds fly around. Seed dispersal can also happen through waste. An animal eats a seed, and then they waste out the seed in a new location, and they now have seed dispersal that way as well. The last thing that they need to know about is germination. And germination is located on page 20. Germination, have you ever planted a garden? When the weather is warm enough, you put the seeds in the soil. Then you water them. Some seeds will not grow unless they have enough water, but when conditions are right, a seed germinates or starts to grow. First, the seed, so you have germination, and they have pictures here which are really good and helpful. They have this first root, this little green part. This is the seed coat. This is what feeds the seed while it's underground, because remember, plants are producers. They need the sun in order to produce their food. But while they're seed, they're eating off the seed coat. Then the seed leaves come, and once there's leaves, the plant uses the sun in order to grow. So germination is from first seed to seedling, and they need to understand that as well. They also need to understand the life cycle of, or at least understand the visual, the life cycle of both types of plants, both types. They can find the life cycle of a flowering plant on page 25, and I will show that in just a moment. And they can find the life cycle of a conifer on page 27, and I will show you that. Let me get to that page. Life cycle of a flowering plant. Remember, flowering plants are food producers. So obviously they start off with seed formation, and it's a cycle, so it starts off in many different places. So seed formation, and with flowering plants, the seeds are inside the fruit. We do have a few exceptions with strawberries where the seeds are outside the fruit, but the seeds are attached to the fruit. Then it goes to germination, where it goes from a seed to a seedling. Then it goes through growth, where the seedling grows into a young adult or a young tree. And then it goes to maturity, which is when the seed, when the plant is then able to reproduce fruit again. So that is the cycle of a plant, a flowering plant. And let's look at page 27 for the life cycle of a conifer. Same type of situation. It does start with seed formation. For conifers, it's inside a cone. That's a difference. They both have seeds, but this one happens inside a cone. It goes to germination, again from seed to seedling. Then it goes through growth, where the seedling becomes a young adult, and then it goes to maturity. So the steps are the same, they just look slightly different. And the last thing that they must know when it comes to plants are that plants are producers. Which means they produce their own food, they make their own food. So that is the study guide for chapter 1. I'm now going to stop this here, and I will do an upload for the study guide for chapter 2.